Eva Carter had always believed that some people were born to shine under crystal chandeliers, while others were born to sweep beneath them. And on that cold Seattle morning, she was once again reminded which group she belonged to as she knelt on the ballroom floor of the Hale Empire Hotel with a soaked towel in her hand, scrubbing at a dark red stain left by a guest who had laughed while spilling expensive wine across the marble. The ballroom lights shimmered from 1,000 glittering fixtures above her, casting a warm glow across the room that only seemed to make her feel smaller because there was nothing glamorous about being on her knees, while the wealthy drifted past in tailored suits and shimmering gowns, pretending not to see her. She heard the click of a phone camera before she even looked up. Someone from the party staff stood a few feet away recording her, while whispering to another coworker who giggled nervously, and by the time Eva realized she was being live-streamed, the caption had already popped up on the screen. "Even poor people deserve respect." The words pierced her like a needle. She was not angry at the message itself because she had long since accepted the humiliation that came with her job. What crushed her was the way her existence had become entertainment for strangers online because she happened to be the one stuck cleaning up someone else's mess. When she stood up later in the storage hall and glanced at her phone during a short break, her heart sank as she saw the video had already been shared on TikTok dozens of times. She could not even tell if people were defending her or mocking her. Either way, her face was now drifting across the internet and she felt exposed in a way she had never wanted. She shoved her phone back into her pocket and took a deep breath. Seattle had always been a city of contrasts, the waterfront glittering with tech money, while the cost of everything from rent to groceries climbed higher every month. Eva lived in a cramped apartment in Rainier Valley, a neighborhood where most people worked 2 or 3 jobs to keep the lights on. She was no different. She cleaned banquet halls for Hale, Empire waited tables at a diner 2 blocks from her apartment, and occasionally babysat for a neighbor to make an extra $20. Despite everything, she tried to stay hopeful. She tried to believe that working hard meant something, that one day she would climb above all of this. But mornings like this made hope feel like a luxury she could not afford. She returned to the ballroom with a stack of fresh linens in her arms. Lydia Moore, her immediate manager, stood in the center of the hall with a clipboard pressed against her chest and a look of disapproval sharp enough to cut glass. Lydia was the kind of woman who acted as though the air itself belonged to her. She never raised her voice, but her tone did the damage for her. "You took too long, Eva. Those guests are waiting for the tables to be reset." Eva lifted her chin slightly because lowering her head would only satisfy Lydia further. "I'm sorry. The spill was heavier than I thought." Lydia scoffed. "Everything is heavier for people who move slowly." A couple of servers snickered, hiding their smiles behind their hands. Eva ignored them and walked toward the far end of the ballroom where a crate of glasses sat waiting to be polished. As she bent to pick up a linen cloth from the cart, her foot nudged another towel and it slid to the floor. She reached down quickly to grab it before Lydia could snap again, but before her fingers touched it, a shadow crossed over her hand. She looked up. A man stood several yards away, tall, sharp-eyed, dressed in a tailored dark suit that looked more expensive than everything in the ballroom combined. His hair was neatly styled, but one lock had fallen out of place on his forehead, softening what might otherwise have been a severe expression. He was not smiling, he was not judging, he was simply watching, and not in the way most wealthy guests did. His gaze felt analytical, as if he was taking in every detail about her before deciding what to do with the information. Lydia noticed him and straightened immediately, clearing her throat as she approached him with a sudden change in posture. "Mr. Maddox, sir, I did not expect you so early." "Cole Maddox." Eva had heard the name whispered around the staff rooms. He was a high-ranking executive at Hale Empire. Ruthless according to gossip, ambitious according to the slightly nicer descriptions, and someone who viewed the employees as pieces on a chessboard. Cole nodded at Lydia without looking away from Eva. He spoke in a calm, low voice that somehow felt colder than Lydia at her worst. "You have an employee issue here." Lydia seized the moment. "Yes, sir, I am handling it." Cole walked closer, his shoes silent on the polished floor. Eva felt a prickle of unease slide up her spine. The way he examined her was not like the billionaire heirs on TV who flirted with staff out of boredom. No, this man looked at her as if she were an obstacle, something inconvenient that had suddenly landed in his way. She tightened her grip on the towel. Cole finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper, but sharp enough to cut through the buzz of staff nearby. People who drop things tend to drop other things as well. I hope you are not careless. Eva swallowed. She wanted to defend herself, but speaking back would only make Lydia furious. So she simply nodded once, even though her throat burned with frustration. Cole stepped around her and continued his inspection of the ballroom, leaving behind a thin trail of tension with every measured step. Lydia shot Eva a smug look before hurrying after him. Eva inhaled slowly, forcing air into her lungs. The video, the comments, the humiliation, the strange stare from Cole Maddox. Everything pressed heavily against her chest, and she still had 8 more hours on her shift. She bent down again to pick up the fallen towel. As she rose, she whispered under her breath the same promise she repeated every morning. One day, I will leave all of this behind. But today was not that day. She returned to work, unaware that someone far more powerful than Cole Maddox would soon walk into that ballroom and recognize her for reasons she could never imagine. The morning of the quarterly investor conference was always chaotic, but nothing about this particular morning felt ordinary to Eva as she carried a tray of polished glass pitchers through the side corridor of Hale Empire Ballroom, her arms tense from holding the weight steady. She moved quickly, hoping to finish before Lydia noticed she was behind schedule, but the hallway was crowded with catering staff, decorators, and technicians adjusting lights for the televised portion of the event. Everyone knew the CEO himself would be arriving soon, and whenever Adrian Hale stepped into a room, every detail had to be flawless. His reputation preceded him everywhere, a billionaire who had taken over the Hale Empire at 28 after his father's sudden passing, a man with a mind like steel and a presence that made even seasoned board members nervous. Eva had never seen him in person. She only knew his face from magazine covers and financial news segments where reporters spoke of his genius and his distance, a man admired and feared in equal measure. She did not expect to meet him today. She certainly did not expect to spill anything on him. It happened in an instant when another worker rushing down the hallway bumped her shoulder, sending the pitcher in her right hand tilting sharply to the left. Eva tried to correct it, twisting her wrist, shifting her balance, anything to keep it upright, but the motion happened too fast. A cold splash hit the floor. First, then a second splash hit something that was definitely not the floor. She gasped, eyes widening as she realized the water had splattered across the polished black shoes of a man who had turned the corner at exactly the wrong second. For a heartbeat, Eva could not move. The hallway went silent, as if everyone collectively held their breath. Then she slowly lifted her gaze. Adrian Hale stood before her. In photographs, he always looked so put together that she assumed he must be heavily edited, but in real life he was even more striking. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that fit him like it belonged only to him, not to the world of men in general. His hair was slightly tousled, not from negligence, but the kind of imperfect detail that somehow made him look more human. His eyes, however, were another story. They were sharp, focused, a piercing gray that seemed to hold 1,000 calculations at once. And right now, they were looking at her. Lydia shoved her way through the crowd with a breathy whisper of outrage. "Eva, what did you do now?" Before Eva could stammer a response, Lydia stepped in front of her as if shielding Adrian from contamination. "Mr. Hale, sir, I am so sorry for this. She is clumsy. We will take care of it immediately." She turned toward Eva without turning her head, her voice low but venomous. "Apologize. Now." Eva felt heat crawl up her neck. The humiliation from the live-streamed incident earlier still clung to her skin, and now she was about to be shamed in front of the most powerful person in the building. But when she opened her mouth to speak, Adrian raised a hand gently, and Lydia stopped mid-sentence. "It is okay." His voice was calm, even warm to her surprise, and the softness in his tone diffused the tension in the hallway. He did not look angry. He looked curious, completely calm. He glanced down at his shoes, then at the puddle, and then back at her face as if piecing together a small puzzle. "What is your name?" The hallway froze. Staff exchanged looks. Lydia blinked twice clearly, unprepared for the question. Eva swallowed her voice barely above a whisper. Eva Carter. Adrian repeated the name quietly, as if it meant something he could not quite place yet. His gaze held hers long enough to make her heart beat faster in spite of herself, and she wondered if she should look away, but something about his expression made it impossible. It was not pity. It was not interest in the way men sometimes looked at her when she cleaned their tables. It was recognition or something close to it, though she could not imagine why. Lydia rushed to speak again, eager to regain control. "Eva will clean it up immediately, Mr. Hale. She will be more careful, I promise you." Adrian finally looked away from Eva, but not before giving her one last thoughtful glance. "Accidents happen. Make sure she is not carrying too much weight at once." His tone was firm, but not unkind. Then he stepped aside and continued toward the ballroom doors with a calm, purposeful stride. The staff parted quickly, creating a clear path as if the air itself shifted for him. Eva stood frozen, her cheeks burning. She could still feel the imprint of his gaze on her skin. The hallway slowly came back to life. The soft hum of voices returned. Lydia leaned close enough for only Eva to hear. "Do not think his kindness means anything. He was just being polite. Now clean this up before someone slips." Eva nodded silently and crouched down with a towel. As she wiped the floor, she felt another presence in the doorway. When she looked up, Cole Maddox stood with one hand in his pocket, watching the entire aftermath with narrowed eyes. His expression was unreadable except for a faint glimmer of suspicion. He tilted his head slightly as if already forming conclusions she did not know she was part of. "Interesting," he murmured under his breath before turning and walking away. Eva watched him leave, and a cold unease settled in her stomach. She did not know what he found interesting, but she sensed it was not good. As she wrung out the towel and collected the pictures again, her thoughts drifted back to the moment Adrian had said her name, not demanded, not scolded, simply asked. It should not have mattered. He was a billionaire CEO, and she was a banquet cleaner. Their worlds did not intersect. But something in his eyes had lingered a moment too long. A moment that would change everything long before she realized it. The evening banquet should have been routine for Eva, just another night where she moved in the shadows while the wealthy toasted to their achievements under glittering chandeliers. But from the moment she stepped into the ballroom carrying a bucket of fresh linens, she sensed the atmosphere was sharper than usual. Investors, executives, and socialites filled the room, their laughter echoing through the high ceiling as if the world had never held a single worry for them. Eva stayed near the edges, folding napkins on a service cart, while Lydia hovered nearby with her perpetual look of disapproval. Everything was going smoothly until a sharply dressed guest with a whiskey glass in hand snapped his fingers at her. Yes, you come here. You come." Eva approached cautiously. The guest pointed to a dark splash of liquor near his feet. "Clean this, now." Eva knelt without complaint, lowering herself to wipe the stain just as she had done 1,000 times before. But before her hand could touch the floor, the guest let out a dramatic laugh loud enough to draw attention. No, not like that. Do it properly. Kneel all the way down. Make it look like you mean it." Several nearby guests turned their heads. Their eyes glinted with a mix of amusement and cruelty. Eva felt heat spread across her cheeks but kept wiping. The guest leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying the spectacle. Someone pulled out a phone. The soft click of recording pierced her ears. Then another phone. And another. A woman whispered loudly enough for others to hear. "This is what happens when you let anyone inside a luxury venue." Another voice chimed in. "She should be grateful she even has a job here." Eva wanted to disappear, but she kept scrubbing her knees pressed against the cold marble floor as the room filled with small, mocking laughs. A man across the table raised his glass. Make sure to get every drop, sweetheart. We paid good money for this event. The cameras kept rolling. Eva felt her throat tighten. She prayed silently that the moment would end quickly, that no one important would walk by, but fate had its own cruel timing. A guest from another table lifted his phone higher and said cinematically, "Workers humiliated at Billionaire Hotel. Where is the CEO?" That sentence would soon become the caption seen by millions. Eva forced herself to keep breathing as she wiped the last of the spill. She stood slowly, hoping the humiliation would fade if she moved quickly enough, but whispers trailed behind her as she walked back toward the service cart. Her hands shook and she tried to hide them beneath a stack of folded napkins. Lydia approached her with stiff irritation. "What did you do to upset them?" Eva blinked in disbelief. "I cleaned the floor," Lydia scoffed. "Then do it without embarrassing the staff. Go straighten the dessert table. Now." Eva bit the inside of her cheek to keep herself from crying. She rushed toward the back hallway where fewer guests lingered, but the burning sensation behind her eyes grew heavier with each step. She slipped through a narrow door into the cold storage room where fresh fruit and beverages were kept. The chilled air washed over her skin, and finally she let the tears fall. In the quiet, surrounded by shelves of produce, she felt the weight of everything she had endured press down on her. The live-streamed video from earlier that morning. The water spill in front of Adrian Hale, now being mocked by strangers for the world to see. She sank onto an overturned crate and covered her face. The humming of the refrigerator was the only sound until the door creaked open. Vei froze. The last person she expected to see stepped inside. Adrian Hale. His tall frame filled the doorway, the faint light behind him outlining the shape of his shoulders and the calm seriousness on his face. He paused when he noticed her tears, his expression shifting in a way she had never seen on any CEO. He was not annoyed. He was not bored. He looked concerned. "Are you all right?" His voice was low, steady. Eva immediately wiped her face with the back of her hand, trying to regain composure. "I am fine, sir. Sorry, I should not be in here." She stood quickly, but her legs wobbled slightly from the emotional storm. Adrian stepped closer, not invading her space, but close enough that she could see the flicker of something warm in his eyes. "I saw what happened out there." Eva shook her head. "It is okay. It happens." Adrian frowned as if he disagreed with every word. "It should not." She said nothing, because what could she possibly say to a billionaire who lived in a world where floors were polished for him and doors opened automatically at his approach? Adrian hesitated for a moment, studying her face. "You do not deserve that." His tone carried a sincerity that caught her off guard. Eva forced a small smile, wanting the moment to end before she broke again. "I appreciate it, but I need to get back to work." Adrian nodded slowly, though his eyes lingered as if he was trying to memorize something about her. He stepped aside so she could walk past. When she reached the doorway, she thought she heard him exhale softly, like he was thinking of words he could not say. Meanwhile, across the ballroom, Cole Maddox watched everything unfold from the balcony above. He had seen the guests mock Eva. He had seen the phones recording. And now he had seen Adrian follow her into the back room. His jaw tightened as he whispered to himself. "So, Adrian is interested in a banquet worker, stood in. That could be useful." Back on the floor, the first video was already being uploaded. The world was about to watch Eva Carter's humiliation for the second time in one day, and the consequences would reach far beyond anything she imagined. Adrian Hale sat alone in his office long after the ballroom lights had dimmed and the murmurs of the banquet faded into the distant hum of the Seattle skyline. He should have been reviewing final notes for the investor conference, yet the documents on his desk remained untouched because his mind was fixed on one thing, and one thing only, the name Eva Carter. He whispered it under his breath again, trying to pinpoint the strange pull he felt the moment she said it. Eva Carter. The syllables stirred something deep inside him, a memory he had not visited in years, a whisper of another life before the weight of the Hale Empire settled onto his shoulders. He leaned back slowly, staring at the ceiling as fragmented images flickered in his mind. A small apple orchard. Summer light filtering through tall trees, a little girl with bright eyes and a laugh that echoed across the fields. Eva. He had not spoken that name aloud in decades. He pushed himself out of the chair with sudden urgency, crossing the office to his private cabinet. Inside a locked drawer lay a small wooden box carved with initials faded by time. He had not opened it since inheriting it from his father, but something urged him now. Placing the box on his desk, he slid the top open. Inside were a few old photographs tied with twine and a small pendant shaped like a tiny bell. He lifted the top photograph carefully. A younger version of himself, no older than 5, stood in a sunlit garden, holding hands with a girl around the same age. She smiled with her front teeth missing and her hair tied with a red ribbon. The back of the photograph bore faint handwriting in his father's neat script. Adrian and Eva promised under the apple tree. His breath caught. He remembered now. The promise. The quiet, arranged engagement made between their families before life pulled them apart. He had not thought about it in years because one day she was simply gone and no one ever spoke of her again. His father had brushed off his questions, saying the Carters had moved away unexpectedly, but he remembered the confusion, the ache, the sense of loss he could not explain. Now, after 20 years, she was suddenly here cleaning banquets in his hotel as if fate had placed her directly in his path. But how had her life taken such a turn? And why had her family vanished without a trace? His thoughts grew heavier as he stared at the picture. He felt the old ache of unanswered questions settle on his chest. Behind the closed door of his office, Cole Maddox paused in the hallway, catching the faint outline of Adrian hunched over his desk. Cole had stayed late pretending to work, but in reality waiting for an opportunity to observe the CEO more closely. The moment he heard the name Eva earlier, he knew something was off. Now, seeing Adrian looking at what appeared to be an old photograph, Cole narrowed his eyes. A childhood connection, perhaps. Something he could weaponize. He continued walking as if uninterested, but his mind was already spinning. Someone like Adrian Hale never allowed a weakness. If Eva Carter was one, then Cole intended to find a way to use her. Inside the office, Adrian ran a hand slowly across the photograph, tracing the outline of the little girl's red ribbon. He remembered the orchard in Napa Valley, where their parents had gathered for summers. He remembered a small ceremony under the apple tree where they had tied 2 strings together because the adults insisted it was symbolic of a promise they would understand when they grew older. He remembered her laughter, her innocence, her disappearance. He exhaled deeply and set the photograph back inside the box, but the sense of urgency did not leave him. Instead, it grew stronger. He needed answers. He needed to know why she was here working a job far beneath her potential and why no one had mentioned anything about the Carter family since they vanished. He reached for his phone to contact a private investigator, but hesitated. He did not want to invade her privacy, not yet. Not without reason. But he also could not ignore what he had seen earlier. The humiliation she suffered the second viral video, the heartbreak in her eyes as she cried in the storage room. It stirred something in him, something protective, a feeling he had not allowed himself to experience in years. He closed the box and placed it back into the drawer, locking it carefully. For now, he would look for answers quietly. He glanced once more at the name written on her employee badge in his memory. Eva. He whispered it softly, a name he should not have remembered yet somehow could never forget. As he left his office to return to the penthouse, Cole stepped out from the shadows, a cordial smile on his face. "Long night, sir." Adrian nodded, but his expression was unreadable. "Something like that." Cole stepped aside, letting him pass, though his eyes followed Adrian with intense calculation. The moment Adrian disappeared down the hall, Cole pulled out his phone, typing a message to a contact he trusted for digging up dirt. Find everything on a woman named Eva Carter. No detail is too small. While Cole set his quiet plan in motion, Adrian stepped into his private elevator, unaware that forces had begun shifting around Eva. He only knew that tomorrow he would find a way to speak with her again to confirm if the girl in the picture was truly the woman who cleaned banquets in his hotel. And if she was then, the past he thought he had buried was about to rewrite his entire future. Eva arrived early this next morning, hoping the quiet hours before sunrise would allow her to work unnoticed, but her plan collapsed the moment she stepped into the service hall and found several staff whispering excitedly about one thing. The CEO was already in the building. Eva froze. Adrian Hale never came this early. He was known for arriving just before major meetings, not at 5:30 in the morning, while the floors were still being polished. She tried to ignore the whispers and moved toward the linen storage to pull out fresh tablecloths, but when she turned the corner she nearly collided with him. Adrian stood there with a clipboard in hand, though he looked more like he was pretending to examine it than actually reading anything. His gaze lifted the moment she appeared. "Good morning, Eva." Her breath caught. She still was not used to hearing her name spoken in his voice, especially spoken gently. "Good morning, sir," she replied quickly, keeping her eyes trained on the stack of linens in her arms. "I did not expect you here this early." Adrian gave a faint, almost boyish smile that did not match his usual controlled demeanor. "Could not sleep. Thought I would check on preparations." But there was something in the way he said it, something that quietly suggested she was the real reason he was here. She stepped aside and he walked with her to the ballroom entrance as if their paths naturally aligned. Eva tried to keep her focus forward, but she could feel his presence beside her steady, sure warm, in a way that unsettled something inside her. Once inside the ballroom, she moved toward the table settings, but as she placed the linens down, Adrian remained only a few steps behind her, watching her movements as though they mattered. She set the last cloth down, then looked up hesitantly. "Is there something I can help you with, sir?" His gaze softened briefly before he answered. "No, just observing." She felt a nervous flutter in her stomach. Observing was exactly what Cole Maddox was doing too, but in a very different way. Cole had been lingering around corners for the past hour, pretending to check schedules while actually watching Adrian's every move. It had not escaped him that the CEO's attention seemed to orbit Eva with increasing frequency. When Adrian approached the dishwashing station half an hour later, Cole stood near the coffee setup pretending to stir sugar into his cup. Adrian stepped into the narrow back hall where Eva was stacking trays. "Need a hand?" he asked casually, though his suit alone made it clear he was not dressed for lifting anything. Eva blinked in surprise. "Oh, no, sir, I can handle it." He picked up a tray anyway and helped her slide it onto the shelf. She stared at him, unsure what to make of this. CEOs did not do manual labor. CEOs did not come to the back halls. CEOs definitely did not help banquet cleaners. Still, Adrian acted as if all of it was perfectly normal. When she thanked him, his jaw tightened slightly as if he was holding words he was not ready to let out. Something pulled him toward her, and he did not seem capable of resisting it. Over the next few hours, he appeared in places he never used to visit. When she stocked glasses, he happened to walk by. When she carried a box down to storage, he arrived moments later, offering to open the door for her. When she checked the list of items needed for the investor lunch, he stood behind her, reading over her shoulder with quiet interest. The staff noticed, and whispers grew louder. Why was the CEO spending so much time near a banquet worker? Lydia bristled each time she saw them in the same vicinity. She cornered Eva near the elevator. "Do not let him see you as a distraction," she hissed. "You keep your eyes down and your work clean. You are not here to be noticed." Eva wanted to argue that she had never asked to be noticed in the first place, but she swallowed her words. She had no idea why Adrian kept showing up, and she certainly did not want more trouble. Yet, trouble came anyway. Just after lunch, Cole intercepted her in the hallway, his smile tight and controlled. "You are Eva Carter, correct?" She nodded carefully. Cole stepped closer, his voice smooth but unsettling. "I have a proposal for you. Over dinner. I enjoy talking to staff who have ambition." He meant it as flattery, but it felt more like a warning, a strange mixture of interest and threat. Eva shook her head quickly. "Thank you, but no." Cole studied her for a long beat as if her refusal itself was a challenge. "Ambition is a choice, Eva. Some people climb, Some stay where they are placed. Choose wisely. He walked away, leaving her skin crawling. She exhaled shakily, wondering why powerful men seemed to be circling her from every direction. When she returned to the ballroom, Adrian stood near the grand windows reviewing notes with a stern expression. Yet, the moment he saw her, his demeanor softened instantly. Eva looked down, nervously tapping the edge of a serving tray. "I think Mr. Maddox is upset with me," she said before she could stop herself. Adrian's jaw tightened at the name. What did he say? Nothing. Just a strange comment. Adrian stepped closer, his voice low. "If he made you uncomfortable, tell me. I can handle it." The protectiveness in his tone made her chest tighten unexpectedly. She shook her head gently. "I just want to do my job, sir. Nothing more." Adrian nodded, though the tension in his shoulders remained. "Understood. But if anyone bothers you, you come to me." She opened her mouth to protest again, but something in his expression stopped her. It was the weight of sincerity, the kind that made someone feel seen even when they wished they were invisible. Adrian finally stepped back, giving her space. "I will let you work." He said it as if it took effort to walk away from her. But as he left the ballroom, Cole watched from the side door, his eyes sharp with suspicion. Adrian Hale was known for discipline, calculated decisions, and emotional distance. Yet today, he hovered in the orbit of a banquet cleaner, as if pulled by gravity, and Cole intended to discover why. Eva returned to her tasks, trying to ignore the strange shift around her, but every time she looked up she could feel Adrian's presence somewhere nearby, watching quietly as if unraveling a memory he could not yet place. Neither of them knew the truth was already beginning to surface piece by piece, drawing them toward a promise buried 20 years ago. The Hale Charity Gala was the crown jewel of the year, an event so extravagant that even employees whispered its name with a mixture of awe and anxiety. It was the night when Seattle's elite flooded the ballroom wearing designer gowns and tuxedos, where every chandelier shimmered like stardust and every camera waited to capture the perfect glimpse of wealth and power. For Eva, it meant 12 hours of rushing behind the scenes, smoothing tablecloths, polishing champagne flutes, and praying nothing went wrong. She arrived at the ballroom just after noon with her hair tied back tightly and her uniform freshly pressed. Her stomach twisted with nerves. The viral videos from the past 2 days hovered like a storm cloud above her head, and she feared someone would recognize her as the girl on her knees being mocked online. But she had no choice. Rent was due soon, and work was work. Lydia Moore stood at the center of the ballroom with her clipboard tucked against her chest, barking orders like a general preparing for war. When she saw Eva, her eyes narrowed. "You will be stationed in the VIP section tonight. Do not speak less spoken to. Do not drop anything. Do not draw attention. Understand?" Eva nodded, though her chest tightened painfully. The VIP section was the worst possible place for her. Too many influential eyes, too many phones, too many people who believed service workers existed only to serve, not to exist. As the hours passed, the ballroom transformed into a glittering world Eva did not belong to. Florists arranged towering displays of white orchids. Caterers rolled in trays of lobster canapes and truffle risotto. Musicians tuned their instruments on the elevated stage. Every detail was perfection. And then Adrian Hale entered. His presence shifted the air like a temperature change. Guests straightened. Staff adjusted their posture. Even Lydia softened for a fleeting moment. Adrian wore a midnight blue suit that fit him like second skin. His hair slightly tousled, his expression poised, yet unreadable. But when his gaze drifted across the room and landed on Eva, something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. Concern. Something deeper she dared not name. She turned away quickly, pretending to adjust a centerpiece. The gala officially began as guests poured in through the grand doors, their jewels glittering under the chandeliers. Eva moved between tables, silently refilling water glasses and clearing empty dishes. Every time she thought the night might pass smoothly, the universe proved her wrong. It happened near the center of the VIP area. Lydia glided past Eva carrying a tray of champagne. A moment later, Lydia stumbled just enough to tilt the tray toward Eva's section. One tall flute tipped and spilled a splash of golden liquid across a pristine white linen. Lydia gasped dramatically. "Eva, what did you do?" Eva blinked. "I did not touch it." Lydia's voice sharpened. "Do not lie. You were standing too close to the table." Several guests turned their heads. A few raised eyebrows. Someone even lifted a phone. Panic prickled beneath Eva's skin. "I swear I did not." Lydia cut her off loudly. "Enough. Clean it up. Now." The tone carried humiliation designed to slice straight through her. Eva knelt reluctantly, reaching for a towel when a voice behind her froze the entire table. "That is enough, Lydia." Adrian's voice was colder than she had ever heard. Guests fell silent. Lydia turned slowly, her face draining of color. "Mr. Hale, I was just ensuring the presentation remains flawless." Adrian stepped forward, his gaze slicing through the tension. "The spill originated from your tray, not from her. I watched it happen." Lydia's lips parted, but she had no excuse to offer. She lowered her eyes and stepped back. The guests glanced at each other, intrigued. Eva rose from the floor, her heart racing. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, though she did not know if he heard her. Adrian held her gaze for a moment longer than necessary before turning back toward the crowd as if nothing had happened. But Cole Maddox had seen everything. Standing near the bar with a glass of bourbon, he watched the exchange with thinly veiled irritation. Adrian had always been controlled, distant, careful about favoritism. Yet, with Eva, he broke his rules. Cole took a slow sip, his eyes fixed on Adrian's retreating figure. "Interesting," he murmured again. As the evening progressed, Lydia did not approach Eva again, but the unease remained thick in the air. When the main courses were cleared, Eva stepped into the service corridor to catch her breath. She leaned against the wall, inhaling deeply. Her reflection in the small service window revealed exhaustion, but before she could gather herself, a tall shadow stepped into the corridor. "Cole," he smiled, without warmth. "Quite a show in there." Eva stiffened. "I did not do anything wrong." Cole's gaze slid down her face with unsettling precision. "That is not the point. The point is that Adrian Hale defended you publicly, not a common occurrence." Eva swallowed. "I do not know why he did." Cole leaned closer. "I do. And that is why you need to be careful. People will think you are trying to climb above your place. People talk. Opportunities disappear. Do not make yourself a target." His tone was a threat disguised as advice. Eva forced a breath. "I am just doing my job." Cole stared at her for a long moment, then stepped away. "See that you continue." Moments after Cole disappeared down the hall, Adrian appeared at the opposite end. His expression darkened when he saw her shaken. "Did Maddox speak to you?" She hesitated. "He just said people talk." Adrian's jaw clenched. "He should not be talking to you at all." He stepped nearer, lowering his voice. "Eva, you do not have to face this alone." The sincerity in his tone wrapped around her like something dangerous, something comforting, something she was terrified to feel. She nodded quickly, looking away. "I should get back to work." Adrian watched her walk off. His eyes filled with a weight she did not see, responsibility, longing, and the ghost of a promise he could no longer ignore. The night was far from over, and the storm brewing around them had only just begun. Eva hurried out the side door of the ballroom as soon as her shift ended, desperate for a moment of fresh air away from the glittering pressure of the gala. Her heart still raced from everything that had happened, the public scolding from Lydia, the strange intensity in Cole's warning, and worst of all, the way Adrian Hale had stepped in front of an entire room to defend her. She wrapped her arms around herself, stepping into the quiet service garden behind the hotel where staff went to breathe when the world became too loud. The soft hum of distant traffic filled the cool night. She closed her eyes for a moment. Then footsteps approached behind her and her breath hitched. "Eva," he said quietly. Adrian's voice carried something heavy, something unguarded. She turned, and he stood a few feet away, the moonlight cutting across his features, making his eyes look almost silver. She straightened quickly. "Sir, I was just taking a break. I will leave in a moment." Adrian shook his head softly. "You do not have to leave. Not from me." His tone startled her not because of the words, but because he sounded almost nervous. She frowned slightly. "Is something wrong?" Adrian stepped closer, but not too close, giving her enough space yet making it clear he needed to say whatever had been burning inside him since yesterday. "What happened tonight should not have happened, and I will address it," he said. "But that is not why I came out here." Ava swallowed her throat tight. "Then why?" Adrian exhaled, looking away for a brief moment as if collecting courage, something she never imagined a man like him would need. "Because I know your name." Her brow furrowed. "Yes, we spoke yesterday." "No," he said quietly. "There is more." He reached into his inside jacket pocket, pulling out a small folded photograph and held it between them, but he did not force it into her hand. "I need you to see something." He unfolded it slowly, revealing an image that made her breath stop. A little boy with light brown hair stood beneath an apple tree holding hands with a small girl whose hair was tied with a bright red ribbon. Eva stared hard at the picture, then at him, then back again as confusion and disbelief tangled inside her. Adrian's voice softened. "This is me, and that is you." She shook her head, barely able to process the words forming. "No, that cannot be me." "I would remember," maybe he said quietly. "Maybe you would, but I remembered the moment you said your name. Something inside me recognized you." Eva stared at the photograph again, her pulse thundering in her ears. She had no photos of her childhood, no heirlooms. Nothing survived the chaos that took her family away. She whispered almost to herself, "I do not understand." Adrian looked at her with a kind of gentleness she had not known he was capable of. "Our families used to spend summers together in Napa Valley. There was a small orchard. The adults arranged something between us, a promise for the future. We were engaged in the way children are engaged. Not legally, but symbolically. Our parents meant for us to grow up and choose it for real one day." She felt the world tilt. Engaged. To him. A billionaire. The idea was too large, too unreal. She shook her head again, stepping back slightly, her voice trembling. "Why would someone like me be connected to your world?" Adrian's eyes held an ache that made her chest tighten. "That is what I am trying to understand. When I was 6, you disappeared. Your parents vanished. No one ever told me why." He paused, still holding the photograph, but now he slid it toward her gently. "I think you deserve to have this, even if it confuses you." Eva took the photo with shaking fingers. The little girl in the picture did look like her. The smile, the hair, the tiny scar on the wrist, a scar she still had. Her breath caught sharply. Adrian saw her reaction and stepped closer, his voice low. "You remember something?" She nodded slowly, barely able to form words. "I remember the orchard. I remember a red ribbon. But I thought it was a dream. Things blur when you are a child." Adrian finished for her. "Yes, they do." They both stood in the quiet garden, the truth swirling between them as fragile and shocking as the night breeze. Eva pressed a hand to her forehead. "This is too much, sir." Adrian looked pained. "I know. I should have waited, but after seeing how you were treated tonight, I could not hold it in any longer." She stared at him, her voice barely audible. "Why, tell me now." Adrian hesitated, then answered with raw honesty. "Because when I saw you kneeling on that floor, I felt something break, and I did not know why until I saw this picture again. Because you are not a stranger to me, Eva. You never were." Her heartbeat stumbled. No one had ever said something like that to her, not with such truth behind it, but fear rose too thick for her to ignore. "This changes nothing," she whispered. "You are the CEO of this entire empire. I am just someone who cleans up after parties. This kind of story does not happen in real life." Adrian's expression softened, but not with pity, with certainty. Maybe it is not a story. Maybe it is just the truth we never had the chance to understand. Before she could respond, the service door swung open. Cole Maddox stood in the entryway, his eyes narrowing instantly when he saw them together. His voice was coated with false politeness. "Sir, the board is waiting for your post-gala briefing." Adrian did not look away from Eva. "I will be there soon." Cole's gaze flicked between them, sharp, calculating, dangerous. Then he disappeared back inside. Eva exhaled shakily. "I should go." Adrian's voice dropped to a whisper. "Eva, please do not run from this." She shook her head, struggling to breathe evenly. "I am not running. I am trying to survive." She stepped past him quickly, not looking back. Adrian watched her leave his fingers curling with the weight of the secret he had finally revealed. He knew this truth would shatter her world, but hiding it any longer was impossible. And as she hurried down the hallway, her heart aching with confusion, she did not notice the shadow watching from around the corner. Cole Maddox had heard enough to know that whatever bound Adrian and Eva together was not simple and not harmless. It was a weakness, a history, and perhaps the key to destroying Adrian Hale once and for all. Eva woke the next morning with a tight heaviness in her chest, the kind that comes from a night with too many unanswered questions and too little rest. She stared at the ceiling of her small apartment, listening to the distant sounds of early traffic drifting through the thin walls. Her thoughts were tangled beyond sorting. A childhood engagement. A photograph proving she had once belonged to a world she lost. Adrian Hale, looking at her like she was someone he had been searching for his entire life. It was too much to carry, and yet she had no choice but to get up and face another day. By the time she reached the staff entrance of Hale Empire, her stomach was knotted with unease. Something felt different in the air, attention sharper than before. Employees whispered in clustered groups, and every phone seemed to be buzzing with notifications. When Eva stepped into the main corridor, one of the servers glanced at her with wide, startled eyes, then quickly looked away as if afraid of being seen acknowledging her. Eva frowned. She headed toward the break room and froze at the doorway. A group of staff huddled around a phone watching a video. Her video. Only it was not the ones from yesterday. This one was new. On the screen, she saw herself arguing with Lydia in the prep hall 2 nights before. Except it was not a real argument. It was a moment Lydia had snapped at her for stacking trays too slowly. In the edited clip, it looked as though Eva was yelling and threatening her. The caption read, "Hotel worker threatens supervisor during luxury event. Staff unsafe. Hashtag Hale Empire. Hashtag fire her." Eva felt her stomach drop. "That is not what happened," she whispered. A dishwasher turned toward her, looking startled before muttering, "I did not know you talked like that." She tried to reach for the phone, but the crowd parted away from her as if she carried something contagious. Heat flared in her cheeks, humiliation sharp enough to sting. She rushed toward the ballroom, hoping Lydia would fix this misunderstanding, but when she entered, Lydia was already waiting, arms crossed and face tight with manufactured disappointment. "I am suspending you pending investigation," Lydia said flatly. Eva felt the room tip. Suspension? For what? Lydia did not blink. Threatening a superior, making guests uncomfortable, creating a hostile environment. Eva shook her head desperately. "I did not threaten anyone. That video is edited." Lydia sighed dramatically. "Of course you would say that. And do not expect Mr. Hale to help you. He has a company to run, not time to clean up after you." The statement hit deeper than it should have because Eva was not sure she believed she deserved Adrian's help anyway. She stepped back, her throat dry. "I did nothing wrong." Lydia's lips curved slightly. "Then you have nothing to worry about. But until then you are not to step foot in this ballroom. Understand?" Va nodded weakly, then turned away before her eyes could betray her. The hallway blurred as she walked. Each step felt heavier than the last. She pushed open the back door to breathe, but the cold air outside did nothing to steady her shaking hands. Her phone buzzed nonstop, but she could not bear to check it. She leaned against the wall, closing her eyes. How many people had seen the edited video? How many strangers now believed she was violent, dangerous, unhinged? She had worked her entire life to stay invisible, and still somehow the world found a way to punish her. Inside, on the mezzanine floor, Cole Maddox stood with a satisfied smile as he watched reactions ripple across the staff. His plan was working perfectly. A single manipulated clip, and the narrative twisted exactly the way he wanted. A threat to management. A liability. And by tonight, if things went his way, Eva Carter would be erased from the Hale Empire entirely. Cole turned and made his way toward the executive elevator where Adrian had just stepped out reviewing documents on his tablet. "Good morning, sir," Cole said with a polite but hollow tone. Adrian barely acknowledged him, still absorbed in the investor summaries. Cole continued casually, "You may want to check the social reports. There is a developing issue involving one of the Banquets staff." Adrian finally looked up. "What issue?" Cole handed him a tablet displaying the edited video. Adrian's expression changed instantly, the calm in his face dissolving into disbelief followed by sharp, cold anger. "This is fake," he said immediately. "The audio is wrong. The angle is wrong." Cole shrugged with manufactured neutrality. "Regardless, the clip is circulating, and the board is concerned about liability. I have taken the liberty of suspending her until matters are clarified." Adrian lowered the tablet, his jaw tightening. "Who authorized you to touch staff decisions in my department?" Cole smiled faintly. "Damage control requires quick action. We cannot have an unbalanced worker endangering our reputation." Adrian's eyes hardened. "She is not unbalanced." But Cole did not back down. "Protecting her so openly will raise questions, sir. You would not want unnecessary attention." Adrian stared at him long enough to make Cole shift uncomfortably. "I will deal with this myself." He handed the tablet back abruptly and strode toward the stairs, not waiting for the elevator. Cole watched him leave, annoyance simmering beneath his composed exterior. Adrian was becoming unpredictable. Dangerous, even. And an unpredictable CEO could be removed if the board believed he had lost control. Meanwhile, Eva fled toward the employee courtyard, fighting the urge to hide her face from others. She sank onto a bench, hugging her arms tightly around herself. The world felt like it was collapsing beneath her feet, and she did not know where to run. Footsteps approached, and she braced herself, expecting Lydia or another accusation, but the voice that spoke was the only one that could cut through her panic. "Eva," Adrian said softly. She looked up, and for a moment she wanted to cry simply from seeing someone who did not look at her with judgment. "Sir, please do not." He lifted a hand, gently stopping her apology. "I saw the video." She looked down. "It is bad. It is not real, and I know that." His voice carried quiet conviction enough to steady the trembling inside her. "Someone inside this company is targeting you." Her breath caught. "Why would anyone target me?" Adrian hesitated, then answered, "Because of me." His admission left her stunned, but before she could speak, he sat beside her, leaning forward with a deep exhale. "You are suspended for now, but I will fix this. I promise you, Eva. I will not let the world tear you apart for something you did not do." She stared at him, her heart aching with both hope and fear. "What if you can't?" Adrian turned his head, meeting her eyes with a resolve she had never seen before. "Then I will tear down whoever is behind it," and he meant every word. Adrian spent the next 24 hours in a state of controlled urgency, the kind that would have terrified any executive who had ever worked under him. He moved with silent precision, barely speaking to anyone except the handful of people he trusted, which was a very short list. By dawn, he had already contacted a private investigation team he used only for delicate, sensitive matters, and nothing in his life had ever felt more delicate than the mystery wrapped around Eva Carter. When the lead investigator, a man named Porter, arrived at the penthouse conference room, Adrian wasted no time. "I need everything you can find on a woman named Eva Carter. Childhood records, family history, school files, anything." Porter nodded, though his brow furrowed. "Carter is a common name, sir. Do you have any identifiers?" Adrian opened a small folder revealing the photograph of two children beneath an apple tree. I need to know what happened to this girl and her family 20 years ago. Porter studied the image carefully. It may take time. Families who disappear are rarely accidental. Adrian's jaw tightened. I know. That is why you are here. Meanwhile, Ava sat alone at home, staring at the photo Adrian had given her. She traced the little girl's smile with her fingertip, wondering how something so innocent could feel so heavy. Memories came in flashes like sunlight through broken glass. Running between trees, laughing at fireflies. A man's voice calling two names, Adrian and Eva, time to come inside. But each memory was tangled in something darker. A sense of loss she could not fully grasp. Why had her family left? Why did no one tell her about any of this? And why did it hurt so much to imagine that the boy in the photograph had once cared about her deeply enough to hold her hand under an apple tree? She pressed the photo to her chest as a sharp ache settled beneath her ribs. She had nothing from her childhood, not a toy, not a letter, not a scrap of paper with her name on it. Everything vanished the day her life changed. She wished she knew why. While she struggled alone, Adrian hovered between meetings, unable to focus on anything except the heaviness in his chest. He had always believed the past was something a man could outrun, but Eva's presence proved otherwise. Later that afternoon, Porter returned with preliminary findings. Adrian leaned forward, tension etched into his features. Tell me. Porter exhaled slowly. Your memory was right. The Carter family did own a small home in Napa Valley near your family's orchard, but the property records end abruptly. There was an accident involving her father. Reports said a car crash, but the police file was unusually thin for something that caused a death. No follow-up, no autopsy request, no extended investigation. Adrian stiffened. That makes no sense. Porter nodded. That is exactly the problem. There is more. Someone filed a request to seal several documents involving the family the same week they disappeared. Adrian's eyes darkened. Who? Porter checked his notes. A legal representative hired by the previous Hale administration. Silence fell heavy. Adrian felt his pulse pound. You are saying my father's company was involved. We cannot confirm that yet, sir, but someone connected to Hale Empire tried to bury their trail. Adrian leaned back, trying to steady himself. He wanted to believe his father had been a good man, but the Hale Empire was built on powerful, ruthless decisions and not all of them pure. Porter continued carefully. As for Eva, after her father's death she was moved to foster care, multiple placements, no relatives came forward, and then she simply dropped out of recorded history around age 9. Adrian pressed a palm to his forehead. Eva had carried the weight of loss alone for decades while he had lived a life of privilege, never knowing the price someone else paid for it. He whispered almost to himself, she deserved better than all of this. Porter hesitated before adding one final detail. Sir, one more thing. Someone else has been asking questions about her. Adrian's head snapped up. Who? Porter's expression grew cautious. Cole Maddox. Adrian felt something cold crawl up his spine. Cole was digging into Eva's past. Cole already tried to weaponize a fake scandal against her, and now he was searching for more. Adrian dismissed Porter immediately and strode straight toward the executive floor. Cole was in his glass office reviewing quarterly figures, but he glanced up the moment Adrian entered. You look troubled, Adrian. Something on your mind. Adrian stared at him the way a storm studies the shoreline. Why are you investigating Eva Carter? Cole raised a brow, feigning polite confusion. I look into all irregularities. She is an employee who has caused public complications for the brand. I am protecting the company. Adrian stepped closer. You are lying. Cole's jaw flexed the first crack in his polished composure. If the CEO is becoming emotionally involved with a staff member, it is my responsibility to understand risks. Adrian's voice dropped low and dangerous. She is not a risk. She is someone who deserves respect, and you will stop digging into her life." Cole held his gaze with a slow, deliberate smile. "Some secrets do not stay buried, Adrian, especially those tied to the Hale Empire." Adrian left before his anger could explode. But he knew one thing with certainty: Cole was not merely curious. He was hunting, and Eva was the target. Meanwhile, miles across the city, Eva made her way to visit the only person she could think of who might know anything about her past. Mrs. Langley, her former neighbor from her earliest foster placement. The elderly woman opened the door with warm surprise. "Eva, my dear, it has been years. What brings you?" Eva held out the photograph with trembling hands. "Do you know anything about this?" Mrs. Langley adjusted her glasses, studying the image. After a long silence, she whispered, "Oh, sweetheart, I hoped you would never find this because the truth hurts more than anything." Eva's throat tightened. "Please tell me." Mrs. Langley guided her inside with slow, fragile steps. "Your family did not move away, Eva. Something happened, something that frightened them enough to run, and whatever it was, they tried to protect you from it." Eva's breath shook. "Protect me from what?" Mrs. Langley lowered her voice. "From powerful people. From the kind of danger children should never be near." Eva felt her knees weaken. Mrs. Langley placed a gentle hand on her arm. "You were meant for a different life, but fate tore it away. And now that it has returned, be careful, my dear, because the truth always comes with a price." Eva clutched the photograph as a chill ran through her. She had thought her past was empty. She never imagined it hid a danger that was still alive. Adrian drove through the late afternoon traffic toward the outskirts of Seattle with a knot in his chest so tight it felt like he had swallowed a stone. Porter had given him an address and a warning that the man he sought was elderly and cautious, someone who had stayed silent for decades for reasons no one fully understood. Dr. Samuel Brooks, the best friend of Eva's father, the last living link to a promise buried beneath 20 years of silence. When Adrian pulled up to the small weathered home surrounded by tall cedars, he hesitated before getting out of the car, uncertain if he deserved the answers he was about to demand. But he knew he could not face Eva again without the truth. Not when she had already suffered so much because of shadows created long before she could speak. He knocked gently. The door opened after several seconds, revealing a thin, gray-haired man with sharp, observant eyes. "Dr. Brooks," Adrian Hale said quietly. The man's face shifted with recognition, then wariness. "You look just like your father." That was not a compliment. "May I come in?" Adrian asked. The doctor stepped aside only after a moment of heavy thought. The living room smelled of old books and cedar smoke. Adrian sat across from the man, feeling the weight of history settle between them like thick fog. "I know you were close to the Carter family," Adrian began. "I need to know what happened to them." Dr. Brooks folded his hands slowly. "I always knew this day might come." "What do you know so far?" Adrian pulled out the photograph of 2 children under the apple tree. Enough to recognize her, but nothing about why she disappeared. Dr. Brooks' eyes softened when they fell on the picture. "She was a bright child," he murmured. "Her parents adored her, and they trusted your family more than anyone." Adrian felt a sinking feeling. Then why did they vanish? Dr. Brooks sighed heavily. "Because your father was not the man you believed he was." Adrian's blood went cold. "My father did not cause their disappearance. Not directly, no. But he aligned himself with people who would do anything to secure the Hale Empire's expansion. The Carter family owned land in Napa that some very powerful men wanted, land they refused to sell." Adrian's pulse hammered in his ears. "My father would never force someone out of their home." Dr. Brooks looked at him with painful sympathy. Perhaps he did not lift the hammer, but he allowed others to swing it. The accident that killed Eva's father was not an accident. Someone tampered with the car, and when Eva's mother realized the truth, she fled with the child in the middle of the night. Hale Empire lawyers sealed the documents to protect themselves and your father's reputation. Adrian felt sick. He covered his face with a shaking hand. "Why did you not speak sooner? Because your father made it clear that if I did, the little girl would never be safe. And because the men involved were more dangerous than you realize." Adrian breathed slowly, trying to process the enormity of what he had just learned. "And the promise," he whispered. "The engagement." Dr. Brooks nodded. "Yes, the promise was real. Your father and Evan Carter believed uniting the families would strengthen both. Eva's father cared for you deeply. He thought the two of you would grow together as equals, not like this." Adrian felt his voice crack. She has lived in poverty her entire life because of decisions made by powerful men. Dr. Brooks reached for a drawer, pulling out a small wooden box similar to the one Adrian had kept hidden in his office. "This belongs to her. Her father left it with me the night he realized they were being hunted." Adrian opened the box carefully. Inside lay a tiny silver locket engraved with the letter E and a folded letter yellowed with time. His hands trembled as he unfolded it. The handwriting was rough but undeniably sincere. "To my Eva. If you ever find this, then it means the world did not take everything from you. You were promised to a boy who was kind and gentle. If the world is good, he will remember you. If not, remember that you were loved before the darkness came. Take this locket. It holds the only thing we could carry with us. I pray you never learn the truth of why we ran, but if you must learn it, then let it strengthen you, not break you. Love, Papa." Adrian swallowed hard, blinking back the sting in his eyes. It took him several seconds to speak. "This will break her," he whispered. Dr. Brooks shook his head. "No, this will free her." Adrian closed the box slowly. "Cole Maddox is digging into her past. He wants to use her to undermine me." Dr. Brooks stiffened. Cole Maddox was connected to the men who wanted the Carter land 20 years ago. Adrian's breath froze. "He is part of this, not directly. He was young then, but he learned from them and he inherited their ambition. If he discovers the truth before Eva does, he will twist it into a weapon." Adrian stood with renewed determination swelling in his chest. "Then I must tell her everything myself, before anyone else can." Dr. Brooks studied him for a long moment, then nodded approvingly. "Your father may have allowed terrible things, but you are not your father, Adrian. Do right by her, protect her." Adrian left the house with the box held tightly in his hands. The sky had darkened over Seattle by the time he reached his car, but inside him a storm had already formed. Not of uncertainty, but of resolve. He would give Eva the truth. He would face the sins of his family. And if he had to dismantle the entire Hale Empire to shield her from the danger resurfacing around them, he would. Eva, meanwhile, paced her small apartment, unable to shake the feeling that her world was on the edge of collapsing again. She clutched the childhood photograph, wondering if the boy in it could possibly understand the wreckage of her life now. When her phone buzzed with a message from Adrian, her heart skipped. "Eva, I need to see you tonight. There is something you deserve to know. Please meet me at the rooftop garden. It is time you learned the truth." Eva stared at the screen, gripping the photo tighter, fearful and hopeful all at once. Her life had been shaped by secrets she never chose. Now she was moments away from facing the one that might change everything forever. The rooftop garden above Hale Empire was usually a serene sanctuary reserved for executives who needed quiet, a place where the city lights shimmered like distant constellations, and the hum of Seattle softened into a low whisper. But tonight, the air felt charged as if the wind itself sensed the weight of the truth about to break open. Eva stepped out of the elevator, clutching the photograph in her hand, her palms damp with nerves. She did not know if she was ready for whatever Adrian wanted to say, but she knew she could no longer run from the past that had already found her. Adrian stood near the railing, his back to her, the faint glow of the skyline reflecting off his silhouette. When he turned at the sound of the elevator closing behind her, his expression softened with something fragile, something that made her chest tighten. "Thank you for coming," he whispered. Vea swallowed. "You said you have something to tell me." Adrian nodded slowly, motioning for her to sit on one of the wooden benches beneath the warm lights. She sat stiffly. the city stretching endlessly below them. Adrian remained standing for a moment, collecting himself as if summoning the courage to carry a burden he was not sure he deserved to bear. Then he opened a small wooden box, the one Dr. Brooks had given him. Eva's breath caught. "I visited someone today," Adrian began quietly. "Dr. Samuel Brooks. He knew your father. He had things your father left behind." Eva's fingers tightened around the photograph. What kind of things? Adrian sat beside her, not too close, but close enough that she could feel the steady rise and fall of his breath. Answering her meant ripping open wounds that belonged to both of them, wounds carved long before either had a choice. With trembling hands, he opened the box, revealing the silver locket and the folded letter. "This locket was yours," he said. "Your father left it for you." Eva gasped, touching the locket as if afraid it might vanish. Tears stung her eyes before she could stop them. Adrian unfolded the letter gently and offered it to her. She hesitated, then took it with hands that trembled as she read the faded handwriting. Each line cut deeper than the last. Her father's love, his fear, his desperation to protect her from danger, the plea for her future, the truth she was never meant to carry. When she finally lowered the letter, her vision blurred with tears. "My father knew something terrible was coming," she whispered, "and he tried to save me." Adrian nodded, grief and guilt colliding in his expression. "Eva, there is more." She braced herself. "The accident that killed your father was not an accident. Someone tampered with his car." She jerked her gaze upward, horror flashing across her face. "No, Eva, I would not tell you this if it were not confirmed. Someone wanted your family gone, and the people involved were connected to the Hale Empire 20 years ago." Eva's breath fractured. Her voice shook with pain and disbelief. "So, your family destroyed mine?" Her words struck him harder than any blow. Adrian inhaled sharply, his voice breaking. "I wish that were not true. My father allowed things he should have stopped. He may not have given the order, but he did not stop the men who did." Eva stood abruptly, backing away from the bench, unable to contain the storm inside her. "Why did you bring me here, Adrian? To break me. To make me understand that my suffering was just business." He stood too, his face stricken. "No, Eva, that is not why. Is not. I want you to know that I am not my father. I am not the men who hurt your family. And I will spend the rest of my life, if I have to, making sure none of them ever touch you again." She shook her head, furious and devastated. "You think saying that fixes anything? You think knowing the truth makes the pain smaller? It makes it bigger, makes everything hurt more." Adrian stepped closer but stopped when he saw her recoil. "Eva, please listen. When I say I'm sorry, I mean it with everything I am. But this is not about destiny or promises made by people who never paid the price. This is about choice. My choice. Not my father's. Not the past. Mine." Eva pressed a hand to her chest, forcing herself to breathe. Her world had been broken before, but this felt like losing the ground under her feet entirely. Adrian lowered his voice. "You deserved a life filled with love, not fear. You deserved protection, safety, someone to stand by you, not hide the truth from you. And if you will let me, I will spend everything I have to give that to you." Eva stared at him, her emotions a tangled knot of longing and pain. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why care so much?" Adrian's voice barely rose above the wind. "Because love is not destiny. It is a decision, and I choose you, not because of a promise made when we were children, but because of the woman you are now, the strongest woman I have ever known." Her tears fell silently down her cheeks. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to push him away. But beneath the hurt was a truth she could not silence. She had always wondered why she felt drawn to him, why her heart reacted when he spoke her name. Maybe it was memory. Maybe it was something deeper. Adrian stepped back, his voice weary. "I understand if you cannot forgive me, or if you cannot look at me the same, but I needed you to know that you are not alone anymore, and anyone who tries to hurt you will answer to me. Before she could respond, the rooftop door swung open with a violent crash. Both turned. Cole Maddox stood in the doorway, flanked by two board members, their faces cold and severe. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Adrian Hale. One of them said, "Your presence is required in the boardroom immediately." Cole stepped forward, his eyes sharp with victory. "It concerns misconduct. Specifically, your involvement with an employee who is currently under investigation." Eva felt her heart collide with her ribs. Adrian's jaw hardened. "This is not related to company affairs. It is related to everything that could bring the empire down," Cole said icily. "The board wishes to address your compromised judgment." Adrian exhaled once, then turned to Eva, his voice soft even as danger swirled around him. "Do not be afraid. I will fix this. I will protect you, always." Then he walked past Cole without a backward glance, ready to face whatever consequences awaited him. Eva clutched the locket, trembling as the rooftop lights blurred through her tears. She did not know how, but she knew one thing with absolute clarity. Adrian Hale was walking straight into a war, and he was walking into it because of her. The boardroom felt like a battlefield long after the confrontation ended, and though Adrian emerged with his position intact thanks to irrefutable evidence of Cole's manipulation, the cost of the war lingered in every hallway of Hale Empire. Cole was removed from the building, escorted by security with a fury so quiet it was more dangerous than shouting. Lydia resigned 2 days later when her involvement in the edited video was uncovered. The truth came out in waves, not all at once, but steadily enough that the world finally saw what Eva had endured and what Adrian had risked to defend her. Yet none of that erased the storm they had survived. When Adrian found Eva again, standing alone near the loading dock after the dust settled, she looked like she was bracing for another hit. He approached slowly, as if afraid she might vanish like the past had once stolen her away. "Eva," he said softly. She turned her eyes, tired but clearer than before. Her suspension had been lifted, but she had not returned to work yet, unsure of her place now that the world knew so much about her. "I do not know where to stand anymore," she whispered. "Everything feels different." Adrian nodded gently. "It should feel different, because now you know the truth, and the truth cannot be undone, but it can be rebuilt." She looked away, clutching the locket around her neck. "You do not owe me anything, Adrian. You could have let this go." He stepped closer, his voice low. "I could never have let you go. Not again. Not after waiting 20 years without even knowing what I had lost." She opened her mouth to argue, but her voice faltered. The wind carried the faint smell of rain across the courtyard, and for a moment silence settled between them like a fragile truce. Then Adrian offered a choice, not a command, not an expectation, but a simple, quiet offer. "If you want to leave this place, I will help you. If you want to stay, I will protect your space. And if you want distance from me, I will honor that too." Eva stared at him, unsure whether to be relieved or terrified. "You would really accept that, even if I walk away?" Adrian nodded, though a shadow of pain flickered in his eyes. "Love is not ownership, Eva. It is choosing someone even if they choose something that hurts you." For the first time since learning the truth, she felt a warmth spread through her chest, replacing the bitterness with something fragile but hopeful. "I do not want to run," she whispered, "but I need time to breathe, to think." Adrian exhaled as if he had been holding that breath for days. "Then take all the time you need. I will be here." She nodded slowly, and for the first time since their worlds collided, she believed him. In the weeks that followed, Eva returned to the ballroom, but not as a cleaner. Adrian did not interfere in her career, but the board insisted she be offered a position free of the power imbalance that had caused so much chaos. With her excellent work history and the strong support of the events team, she accepted a new role as assistant event coordinator, a far more stable job with better hours and recognition. Some staff still whispered, but the tone had changed. The girl from the viral humiliation was now known as the woman who stood in the truth without breaking. And Adrian kept his distance, respecting her need for space. but he watched from afar with a quiet pride he could not hide. Every time he saw her reviewing schedules or adjusting floral arrangements, he felt something heal inside him, something that had been broken since he was a child, when Eva vanished from his life and je l'avais without explanation. Meanwhile, Eva began to rebuild herself piece by piece. She learned to navigate her new role, found friendships in unexpected places, and even visited Dr. Brooks again to ask questions she had been too scared to ask the first time. He showed her old letters from her parents' photographs of the orchard in Napa Valley, and stories about the promise made under the apple tree. Each truth hurt, but also stitched something back together. One evening near sunset, Adrienne waited by the employee exit, unsure if she would walk past him or turn toward the bus stop. She paused when she saw him, hesitated, then approached. "I visited the old orchard," Eva said quietly. "Dr. Brooks showed me where the tree used to stand." Adrienne blinked, surprised. What was it like? She smiled faintly. Empty, but peaceful. The land changed, but it felt familiar somehow, like a place that remembered me even if I forgot it. Adrienne swallowed. "I want to see it with you, if you would let me." She studied him carefully. This time, she did not see the CEO or the man tangled in her past, but someone who had stood between her and the darkness without asking for anything in return. She nodded. "Maybe we should go, just to see." The next weekend, they drove to Napa Valley in silence that was not uncomfortable but full of quiet questions waiting to be answered. The orchard was gone, replaced by newer developments, but a few old trees still stood at the far end of the property. Eva stepped toward one of them, touching its rough bark. Adrienne joined her, letting his hand rest near hers without touching. "This is where we made the promise," he whispered, "even if we did not understand it," but nodded, her eyes softening. "The promise is not what scares me. What scares me is what comes after." Adrienne finally looked at her with a vulnerability few had ever seen. "Then build something new with me, something not tied to the past. No secrets, no shadows, only choice." Her heart tightened because she knew what it cost him to say that. She lifted the locket gently and held it between them. "My father wanted me to be strong, and you wanted me to have the truth. I think both matter." Adrienne's voice dropped to a whisper. "Eva, I choose you, even if it takes time, even if you are afraid, even if you do not choose me today." She breathed deeply, the wind rustling the grass around them. "I am not afraid of you," she said softly. "I am afraid of losing myself again." Adrienne nodded. "Then, let us build something where you never have to." She looked up at him, and for the first time she did not feel pulled by destiny or trapped by the past. She felt something simple and real, possibility. She stepped closer, just enough that their shoulders brushed, and she whispered, "I think I am ready to try." Adrienne closed his eyes briefly, a quiet breath escaping him like relief wrapped in gratitude. Together they stood beneath the fading light of Napa Valley, not as children bound by a forgotten promise, but as two people choosing the future with open eyes and honest hearts. 1 year later, the Hale Empire Ballroom shimmered under the glow of hundreds of soft golden lights. Yet, for the first time in her life, Eva Carter did not enter through the staff hallway with a mop bucket or a stack of linens balanced in her arms. She stepped through the grand front doors wearing an ivory dress that flowed like a quiet sunrise around her, her hair pinned back with delicate silver clips that sparkled just enough to feel special without feeling borrowed from another world. She paused at the threshold, letting the hum of gentle conversation wash over her. The scent of white orchids and polished wood stirred memories she thought she had buried, the humiliation, the viral videos, the years of blending into the background like a shadow. But tonight was different. Tonight, the ballroom was filled with faces turned not toward the wealthy or the powerful, but toward her. And at the far end of the aisle, beneath an arch of pale green eucalyptus, stood Adrienne Hale, waiting with a smile that softened everything around him. She exhaled slowly, her fingers brushing the silver locket resting at her collarbone. It was not just an accessory. It was proof that her life had not been erased. Proof that her father had loved her. proof that the past no longer controlled her. The music began gentle and slow. She walked forward, her steps steady and sure, though her heart fluttered wildly in her chest. Adrian's eyes never left her. When she reached him, he extended his hand and she placed hers in his without hesitation. His touch was warm, grounding, real. Dr. Samuel Brooks stood beside them, ready to officiate with a small smile that held decades of secrets finally released. "Dear friends," he began, "we gather today not merely to celebrate love, but to witness the completion of a circle left open for far too long." Eva felt emotion rise in her throat. She glanced at the rows of guests. Some were longtime Hale Empire partners. Others were colleagues from the events department who once whispered about her, but now smiled with genuine pride. At the front row sat two people she never thought she would see there, Mrs. Langley dabbing her eyes with a tissue and Mr. Porter looking unusually sentimental. The ceremony was simple, almost startlingly honest. No grand declarations, no extravagant promises, just two people who chose each other despite the history that tried to tear them apart. When it was time for vows, Adrian gently squeezed her hands and spoke first. "Eva, I spent years building a world made of numbers, glass, and steel, but the one thing I never found in any of it was home. I found that in you. I did not find my fiancé. I did not find the child from the photograph. I found the woman who sees people as they are, who survives storms with grace, who taught me that truth matters even when it hurts. I choose you today and every day after, not because of a promise made by others, but because of the life we will build together." Eva blinked back tears, the words settling into her heart like a warmth she had never known. When it was her turn, she inhaled shakily. "Adrian, I spent my life believing the world had forgotten me, that the past had taken everything I could ever hold on to. Then you showed me that something lost can still be found, that healing is not a straight line, that choice means more than destiny. I do not know what the future holds, but if you walk with me, I will meet it without fear." Soft applause filled the room as Dr. Brooks nodded with misty eyes. "With the power vested in me, I pronounce you partners for life." Adrian leaned forward, touching his forehead to hers before kissing her gently, a kiss that held gratitude, sorrow, healing, and hope all at once. The ballroom erupted into applause. Eva laughed breathlessly as Adrian wrapped an arm around her waist, guiding her toward the reception floor where a live quartet played something warm and bright. Staff, who once barely noticed her, now congratulated her with genuine warmth. The same ballroom that once broadcast her humiliation across social media now held her joy, and for the first time she allowed herself to embrace it fully. Later, as the night settled and the guests dispersed, Adrian and Eva stepped onto the balcony overlooking the Seattle skyline. The moon hung low, casting silver light across the city. Adrian slipped his arm around her as she leaned against him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever think about how different our lives could have been?" he asked quietly. Eva smiled softly, "All the time. But I think we ended up exactly where we were meant to." He kissed the top of her head. "Not because of destiny," she added teasingly, "but because we chose it." Adrian chuckled, "Yes, because we chose it." They stood in silence, watching the city lights pulse gently below them. Eva closed her eyes, listening to the faint echo of music drifting from the ballroom. She could almost hear her younger self laughing beneath the apple tree in Napa Valley, running barefoot through grass with a boy who held her hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. She whispered into the night, "I think my father would be happy." Adrian tightened his hold. "I know he would be. And your mother, too." Eva breathed deeply, letting the cool night wash over her. The girl who once cleaned Banquets now stood in the very place she had feared, with a future that belonged completely to her. She turned to Adrian, taking his hand. "Let us go home." Home. A word she had avoided for years. Now it felt safe, warm, true. Together they left the balcony, walking through the ballroom one last time. The chandeliers above shimmered softly, as if bowing to the end of her long, painful journey. The doors closed behind them, sealing away the memories of who she used to be. Ahead waited the life they would build, free from secrets, free from shadows, filled only with choices they made together. And, for the first time, Eva no longer felt like the girl who cleaned other people's dreams. She felt like someone who finally stepped into her own. If you made it all the way to the end of Eva and Adrian's journey, then thank you from the bottom of my heart. Stories like this are more than just chapters and twists. They are reminders that dignity matters, truth matters, and sometimes the person the world overlooks is the one whose heart shines the brightest. If this story touched you even a little, I want to invite you to join our community because you are now part of this channel's family. Every time you watch until the end, like you just did it, tells me you want more stories of slow burn love, quiet strength, and second chances wrapped inside real-world struggles. So, before you go, take one small moment to tap the like button, because that is how YouTube knows you want more heartfelt billionaire romances. If you felt yourself rooting for Eva from the very beginning, leave a comment and tell me what moment hit you the hardest. Was it the first humiliation that broke her? Was it the night Adrian confessed the truth about their childhood? Was it the boardroom showdown where he chose love over legacy? Or was it the quiet promise they rebuilt under the Napa Valley sky? Every comment you leave becomes a light that helps others find this story. If you want to see more tales where ordinary people show extraordinary courage, then subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter. I promise you, each story will bring you deeper into a world of emotional undulation where heartbreak and healing walk side by side. And because I love knowing where my readers are watching from, tell me your city or country in the comments. I am always amazed seeing people from New York to Texas, from London to Trinidad, from the Philippines to New Zealand come together under one story. Your presence is what keeps this channel alive. If you have ideas for future stories, maybe a poor waitress who unknowingly saves a billionaire's child, or a single dad janitor who changes the life of a powerful CEO, or a runaway bride who becomes the heart of a man everyone thought was cold, share them in the comments. Your ideas often turn into the next viral story on this channel. If you want longer stories, more twists, deeper romance, or stronger scandals, tell me that too. Everything you say shapes what I write next. And if this story healed something in you, reminded you that you deserve to be seen, or gave you hope that love can still find its way, please do not keep that feeling to yourself. Share this video with one friend, someone who might need a reminder that even when life breaks you down, you can still rise again. Lastly, I want to leave you with a small question. The same question I ask at the end of every story, because your answers inspire the next ones. Do you believe that love built on choice, not destiny, is stronger and more lasting? Tell me yes or no, and why. I read every single comment because your voice matters here more than you know. Thank you for spending your time with me today, for supporting stories that honor kindness over cruelty, truth over lies, and love over fear. Until the next story, stay safe, stay hopeful, and remember you are worthy of a love that chooses you every single day.